Hey everyone. So as 2023 comes to an end, Jesus, we're just going fast. I'm starting to get scared. I decided to go ahead and do something I haven't really done before and take a look at the top 5 best movies I saw this year, along with looking at the top 5 worst. I haven't really talked about doing top 10 lists on my favorite movies per year. I mostly just said what is my favorite and what is my least favorite, but I decided to go ahead and do it for this year and just go forward with it. So for this year, I'm going to be taking a look and telling you all what my all-time favorite movies this year were, as long as what were my all-time least favorites. How it's going to work is we're going to go back to back. So I'm going to start talking about my fifth least favorite, and then go to my fifth all-time favorite, and then go to my fourth least favorite, and then to my fourth actual favorite. It's going to kind of go back and forth with this. And also keep in mind, I haven't seen every movie this year. I haven't seen every film that was critically acclaimed, nor every movie that was critically panned. This is just based on all the movies I did see. And it's all, of course, just my ranking. It's not a ranking that everyone can agree with, so if you hate me for it, then tough luck. Sorry. My opinions are stupid to you, I know. So let's get these opinions over with. Starting off with my least favorite on the top 5, we have The Flash. God, this movie annoyed me. Not really because of Ezra Miller portraying the Flash. I know that was a big controversy, him being a creepy person who was still casted for the role. That part wasn't really the problem with me. The big problem were a lot of the other things. Like, for one, the CGI. God, it was atrocious. The CGI in this movie was all around awful. Every fight scene that included it looked terrible. And also, of course, there's the forced fan service. We have Michael Keaton as Batman showing up for this movie, and boy is his appearance forced. They kind of try to just throw him out, trying to show off him a lot, and it's obviously trying to go for that thing that made the Spider-Man movie successful, have a bunch of classics we all grew up with. It's that whole fan service thing a lot of movies have been doing, and it can be good. Fan service is fun if it's done right and not forced or blandly thrown in, and that's kind of how it is with this movie. There's a lot of other dumb fan service moments in it too, and none of them are exciting or actually add to the plot. They're just pointless or stupid. And the overall plot for this movie is dumb too. It's about the Flash traveling past time and all such. But we get introduced to all these characters we really don't need to see this much of. They're just there to, give us something exciting. But we're trying to see a movie about the Flash. This is called The Flash. I want to learn about him. I don't want to be introduced to all these things like alternate universes or all that. That's just kind of not in my taste. Nothing this movie has was from my taste. Overall, it's not terrible, but it is a bland, dumb film, and it's not because of Ezra Miller, by the way. It's just all around a bland movie. Now, here's a movie I wasn't even going to see at all, but I decided to go ahead and take a look at it anyway, since I heard good stuff about it. And thus, after my viewing of Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, I gotta say, this film really is a good one. It's a really fun film. I did not expect me to have any care for seeing this. I just didn't think I would want to see it, but then I gave it a look at, and thus I gotta have fun with it. I think the fun for this movie comes from how self-aware its humor is. The kind of humor in this movie is the kind that doesn't come off as taken over by the plot. It's a comedy action film. It's one of those action adventures that you can get invested in, but also can kind of admire the humor they throw at you. I like those kind of movies that throw humor in a good way. The kind that doesn't make the humor force its way through the story and doesn't kind of oversaturate everything. It's just there to kind of blend in well with the idea. That's those kind of comedies are fun. That's what this movie does. It blends in great comedy with some great action scenes. It has some good CGI, a good plot thrown in, and I do really enjoy what this movie provides. I'm pretty impressed by it. Oh boy, The Exorcist Believer is a legacy sequel to The Exorcist. Similar to Halloween, Blumhouse, or should I say Bumhouse, has tried to do good. He did a pretty good job with the first Halloween film from 2018. That movie did a pretty good job at giving us a sequel to the old Halloween films. But then the next few Halloween films came up, and it just went down the drain hard. It seemed like Bumhouse just didn't know how to handle the franchise well. It just decided to dumb it down even more. And unfortunately, that's how it is with this movie. And honestly, I think this movie could have worked out well. It's about, instead of focusing on one scary demon possessed, it's focused on two, which really could have made for a lot more fun, scary moments. But instead, they just dumb it out with a bunch of stuff we don't care about. And it gets to the part where we do have the two possessed kids, and that part just completely takes away from what we expected. Instead of being scary and exciting, it's just bland and boring. This movie is all around underwhelming and boring. Nothing about it actually scares us. It's just trying to be that cool festive. Like, again, it's just fan service. Like, the movie features characters from the old Exorcist film that show up, but they don't really add much to the plot, and their appearance, again, just doesn't mean anything. It doesn't add to much. That's just the problem with fan service. It's trying to do things that you don't even have a plan for. And that's the problem with this movie. Exorcist Believer, it just doesn't know how to be scary. It's just doesn't care about being scary. It just tries to throw in as much as it can, but no, it doesn't work. From the legendary Martin Scorsese, Killers of the Flower Moon is a movie I was really invested in seeing. Even though it's a biopic and it's over 3 hours long, I still wanted to check it out. I was really interested with how it was going. It does have some great stuff to focus on, focusing on the life behind Native Americans and how they fit with our world. It's an interesting story that Martin Scorsese certainly can pull off. It really does work with these things that it provide. We got some pretty good performances from Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, and Lily Gladstone. I also like some of the other appearances of performances this movie has. Like there's John Lithgow in a pretty good role. There's Brendan Fraser in honestly not a bad role, and even Martin Scorsese himself shows up towards the end of the film. The overall movie has a nice environment towards it, and even though it's incredibly long and I guess can be sort of annoying for how long it is, still can provide some pretty good stuff. Has some great storytelling, great character build up, and you really can feel for everything. Kind of how all Martin Scorsese films are. Now here is where DC really is to an end. I just recently rated this movie. I actually saw it yesterday. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is pretty awful. And for pretty similar reasons to The Flash. Only, as bad as The Flash was, at least its plot was conducted. At least they were conducting a plot. And at least the CGI, as bad as it was, only took up for the fight scenes and action moments. It didn't take up mostly the entire film. Which unfortunately isn't the case for this movie. Aquaman The Lost Kingdom has so much CGI and all of it comes off it's bad. The CGI in this movie is bad. It's even worse than The Flash. And the fact that it takes up a good chunk of this movie just makes it even more unappealing. It's not even so bad, it's good. I thought that maybe I could laugh towards the bad CGI, but no, there's so much of it, and if the movie tries to throw in its own humor, then it just doesn't come off as fun. It also just comes off with a very misconducted plot. The plot to this movie has no real direction to it. We're all getting all these different things that we don't really understand what we should be following. We don't know like what our character's supposed to do. We don't know what the villain's actual plan is. We don't know who we're supposed to focus on. It just tries to be relatable. I don't know. Okay, I really don't know what the plot was doing. This movie just didn't have any toward to it. And to me, it definitely was one of the worst films DC has provided. And it's unfortunate because it is their very last movie. It's the very last film that the DC Extended Universe is going to make, because now we have to wait till James Gunn's new franchise comes. But this is kind of why the DC had to end early. They weren't able to succeed with their plan, so this became their last film, and it's a huge blunder. Amber Turd also, yeah. I wish she would not show up in the movie so much, but she did, and it was even more annoying to watch than Ezra Miller, so that's what I gotta say. Speaking of superhero movies, not all of them sucked. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was a real pleasant surprise. James Gunn, yes, him too, was definitely giving us something exciting. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has seemed to be going on a little bit of a downgrade recently, but thankfully this movie was able to exclude from that, as Volume 3 provides all the right things that no one would expect from a Marvel film at this state of age. And it's all thanks to James Gunn. We focus on some sad stuff like Rocket's backstory, which actually does have a great appeal towards it. We focus on some of the sad stuff behind the other characters, and we get a plot that really does work this way as a great conclusion to the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. I think this trilogy really is one of Marvel's finest, and it's great to see the third film actually end this trilogy in a great way. Unlike Quantumania, which kind of put it in the duff zone. But anyway, Volume 3 is a great surprise. It was beautifully done. It was nicely designed. The action scenes were fun. The emotion was great. This really is a great Marvel film. And considering how Marvel's been going, it's great to see something good still coming out of them. I definitely can't wait to see how James Gunn does with the new DC universe. I'm hoping it'll be better paced out and it'll have a better plan towards it so we can follow it better and it doesn't come off as rushed like the last one. And speaking of rushed franchises, Fast X. Fast X, I don't know. I definitely expected this movie to not turn out well. I don't know why. I'm not. I shouldn't be surprised at all. I definitely expected nothing exciting to come out of this. But boy, was this something. It certainly was as bad as I could have imagined. But I think even a good chunk of it might have been even worse. It tries to conclude, but at the same time, we're still getting another one. That's right. This movie actually ends on a to be continued, and not even a good one. It's the kind that is done before the next film's even finished in production. So that's kind of ones I hate. I hate those kind of movies that do a to be continued before the next films even began or finished production, because that way you don't know if we're even going to get it. I mean, yeah, this movie was successful, so we're definitely getting it, but man, it was bad. A lot of it is trying to throw in. There's a lot of stuff the trailer promised that made me think it could actually be passable. I really did think this movie could be passable. I mean, hell, Jason Momoa's performance in this movie is actually the best part, but his character isn't used enough for it to save the film, which is unfortunate. And all the things that the trailer promised are just cashed out. They're thrown out, they're not utilized good enough, and we're instead getting a bunch of stuff that I don't like at all. It's a bunch of the stuff that made some of the other recent Fast and Furious movies not as exciting. This franchise really has been on a downward spiral, and Fast X is the perfect example. I just could not stand how much of it pissed me off. I was pissed off by how much potential it just wasted, and how much of the excitement I was interestingly prepared to see just can be completely underutilized. Oh, the legendary Christopher Nolan. Oppenheimer is definitely one of Christopher Nolan's most legendary works. This film tells the origins behind the legendary bomb creator J. Robert Oppenheimer and the bomb that he created that almost destroyed a living. Is that the saying? I forgot how the saying went, but this movie tells a great origin. It is 3 hours long, so why would I watch it? It's Christopher Nolan. Of course I'm going to watch it. Christopher Nolan knows how to direct a movie. He can make anything exciting. Even something as interesting or as serious as Oppenheimer still can come off as very exciting. We get some great performances by Cillian Murphy and some of the other stars, along with even a couple of extras I wouldn't expect to see in this movie. And we get a lot of great build-up to what happens. We get those great black and white segments, which are pretty well put together. We get a lot of good moments that kind of blend in with each other. It kind of is like a mix between most of Christopher Nolan's past projects. There's Memento, there's Batman, there's Inception. A lot of that stuff you can feel from this movie, while still at the same time telling a new unique story. A story that really does excite me and really is something I love to learn about. I also love how this was Christopher Nolan's work with Universal Pictures instead of the usual Warner Brothers stuff. Him and Warner Brothers have been making a lot of movies, but now he's been working with Universal. So, good to step out from the studio. But anyway, Oppenheimer is a fun movie. If you like Christopher Nolan movies, you'll love this. Even if you're not a fan of biopics, this movie really is something interesting. You'll learn something from it, and you'll definitely get excited from it. Here's a controversial opinion. Five Nights at Freddy's is the movie I hated the most this year. I know, people have fun with it, people like to praise it, but me personally, I really did want to like this movie. I really did. I'm a big fan of the games. But man, this movie betrayed him hard. And I know what you're thinking. I really shouldn't be focusing on comparing this movie to its source material, but in my opinion, when it's based off of digital media, like if it's a film that's based off of a video game or a show or some sort of digital form, I feel like I should look at it for what it's based on, because there's a lot that can be adapted here. That can work for adaptation, but this movie not only feels very unfaithful to what it's based on, but it kind of betrays what it's based on. The whole story is not something that I could qualify towards. Not that I didn't understand it, I did. But that's the problem. I understand it. I understand a lot of things just weren't illogical. Nothing about it was necessary or necessary at all. It wasn't scary at all. I mean, it's supposed to be a PG-13 horror movie, but I've seen a lot of PG-13 horror movies that came off as pretty scary for fun. This movie just doesn't scare at all. There's no scary moments in it at all. I mean, even if you argue there are scary moments, the scary moments that are in this movie don't even really add much to the plot. Like, every time I did see something that was sort of scary, it didn't even really add to the plot. The rest of the film is just dumb. It's these animatronics and a bunch of dumb stuff involved with it. We don't really get much storytelling that I follow good. It's nothing that could really work in with the games. It's all this new stuff they throw in that's equally as stupid as the games themselves. And what makes the game so memorable to me is how they, to me, what makes them so memorable is how they're both silly, but at the same time still can be scary. But with this movie, all of it is just silly. No, they don't really work in with the scary silliness that the games could have. And the animatronics don't look very well fitting with the real world either. I mean, I know I've heard they are practical, so I shouldn't argue about the CGI, but the practical way the animatronics look, they do not blend in with the real world. So I really argue that design that they have, nothing that works there blends in. This just feels like a fan film, honestly, from the way they look. It just feels forced in. And to me, I haven't seen a lot of the critically panned movies, but from the films I have seen, this is the one I seem to really be annoyed and not enjoy the most. I'm sorry to those who love this movie. You can. It's just me personally. I felt betrayed and annoyed by this. But here's something I felt the opposite by. Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse. I know, everyone loves this movie. And for good reasons. The first, Into the Spider-Verse, while I did enjoy that movie, I'm sure a lot of you might have heard me talk about how I did admit it's not the best Spider-Man movie to me. I didn't love it as much as other people did, mostly just because there were many things I weren't too pleased towards. This movie, however, definitely is a step up. It really does do a lot that I'm pretty impressed by. A lot of the problems I had with the Into the Spider-Verse are definitely fixed here. Well, not really fixed, but they are kind of ignored or passed away better. This movie does a better job at its story building, in my opinion, and it really does a better job at creating these characters and creating a well fleshed out plot. The animation is also as great, but I'm glad that they don't focus way too much on having great animation and actually use the great animation for a right cause. We got a lot of great action moments and a lot of great new character villains. Like there's a Spot villain, which had a dumb story, I admit, but they definitely at least still kind of made him something to be scared by. And they even throw in a new, well, we don't really know much about him being a villain yet, but I'm sure he will be by this part 2, is the guy named, damn it, what's his name? I have to look up his name again, but it's the guy that Oscar Isaac voices. I'm sure you should know it. I got to look up his name. But anyway, yeah. His character was pretty great. It was pretty amusing, pretty scary. I really do like to wonder what more can come. As this is going to be a part 1, and the part 2 has started production. I think it's almost just about finished. So yeah, that's definitely a good thing. And Across the Spider-Verse really does show to be a very fun and exciting movie with lots of fun and exciting action. A lot of great character emotion too. We got a lot more emotion from these characters, and I can really feel for them better than I could at first. I really do feel for these characters. Not even just Miles. We actually get a lot of emotion from all the other characters, and we get to learn more from them. We get to learn more to what they have, and we get to even learn more from Gwen, who we didn't really get that much of from Into the Spider, but we definitely learned more from here. I really don't know much else to say. This movie has all around everything I love for the Spider-Man universe. Is it my all-time favorite Spider-Man movie? I can't say it is, but it's definitely a great one. It's a great film to watch. It's definitely the best non-Disney anime movie I've seen now. And yes, the best movie this year. So I just spent about 17 minutes talking about all that. And boy, that is way more time than I've ever spent for my previous top 10s. I think for next year, I'm going to start spending more time with these reviews, just so I can say more, not rush them. But then again, I was still rushing with this, wasn't I? I'm trying to do better. See you next year.